why we use services that don't publish their data beyond kind of top charts. And that's requests we get a lot from users. But I'll give you an example of like how we add these different data sources and why it's sort of difficult to do this, like decide what we add and what we don't add. Is Foursquare wanted to be in front of the music industry, so they came to us, they said, here's a feed of all our concert check-in data. We're like, awesome, we're just going to run this by our clients and make sure that they want it and it's cool. And so we would present it to them and say, hey, we can give you concert check-in data from Foursquare. And they're like, we're like, do you want it? And they're like, great, should we want it? Like, well, I don't know, do you want it? Well, should we want it? Well, does it tie to ticket sales? Does it tie to merch? Does it tie to anything else? And so then it's like, we did pull it in, but not in a substantial way yet, where we're trying to figure out how it processed any of the other metrics. So it's tricky.
Well, if I could follow up, is there any, I guess the second or the deeper part of my question is, are there any behaviors that occur online that you found aren't like service-based that you're having a hard time tracking? So I would like, you list a bunch of websites and it's great because Instagram is the place for images and Tumblr is the place for GIFs and Facebook is the place.
GIFs.
I
think all the data that we really want is directly at odds with privacy laws in America. And
there's no more oppressive.
Right. The NSA's feed, we would put it in place. It's like where people are. We want to understand what, websites you go to and how that impacts which type of music you listen to and which behaviors that you do, period, are predictive of music consumption, purchases, etc. So it's kind of, we want as much as we can to cross with it, but again, with the corollary of the Foursquare example where we need to understand if cat GIF watching is indicative of future iTunes purchases.
I'd say one thing that I'm sure you'd love is like, you kind of have like the aggregate from SoundCloud, the aggregate from YouTube, but you don't know which of those SoundCloud people is the same one as which of those YouTube. You'd love to have a vertical on a single person, which is probably a privacy. No.
We had a map once where Twitter followers were plotted on Google Maps, and I was giving a demo to Def Jam, and Justin Bieber was who I was using, and there was a dot where you click on it and it's all the photos, and it was right on their offices of all of them being fans of or followers of Justin Bieber, and it freaked them the hell out. And we've kind of backed away from that sort of like deep dive, zooming from satellite to like sitting and watching and listening to what. But yeah, it is at odds often with privacy, so we avoid that. Do you want to call it?
This is probably more directed at Peter. Alex can maybe comment. You talk about taste, but in some respects, you're making like the monolithic person as one taste, but taste is modal too. I listen to music. I listen to certain types of music when I'm coding, other types of music when I'm reading research papers, other types of music when I'm cleaning a house, and so on. So, do you run across any of that? Do you try to tie that into some of the stuff of the tools that you're building?
Yeah, I mean, taste isn't just a universal thing. I mean, I feel like the classic one is you have people that have their jogging playlist.
Yeah.
And they listen to like 100 times. It doesn't mean they love this artist 100 times more. So like, we need to learn to be able to filter out some of those things, and also even better to understand, oh, this is jogging, they jog at this time of the day.
That's what I was going to say. You can use it as a predictive thing as well.
Yeah, so we absolutely it's more of an advanced thing, and it's kind of on our to-do list because a lot of the problems still haven't even been solved on the level of, if there's just kind of one taste.
But that's sort of my point, though. Aren't some of the problems that you have because of the fact that there isn't one taste?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I guess we try and break it out into, I guess these pockets, and identify. It's a algorithmically challenging thing because we don't always have, for example, when you listen. So your iTunes, for example, if we were to import your iTunes library, it's like play count 10. It's like, when did those plays happen? We don't know some of that stuff. So sometimes it's just like algorithmically impossible, but it's absolutely something we're looking to do where we identify, I guess, these, a few songs, for example, that, don't really fit the mold, and we sort of try and narrow them out. It's actually a really interesting way also of doing more accurate recommendations. So if somebody listens to, classical jazz and heavy metal, then it's like a really interesting combination that we can, use the combination of those two things. We wouldn't just recommend them the normal heavy metal things. We would look at other people that like heavy metal and jazz and be like, what's the third thing that those people with those two pockets also listen to? So yeah, it's absolutely something that we're interested in.
Yeah, I'm not really like a techie guy, but I got two basic questions. First is like, with all of this marketing, the target audience, how far into puberty or out of puberty, is it the 14, 12, 6, what is the age group that this is, sort of like you're focusing, where your money is coming from? And then on the other side, like a classic movie like, forgetting the title, Discovering or Finding Sugar Man, where there's a guy 40 years ago who is selling half a million albums, CDs under, he's become the hero of apartheid, and he's delivering refrigerators, and he doesn't even know he exists. But how this stuff can create, social change, like in other countries. I mean, do you ever get into that, or is there any interest in that from an anthropological point of view? So those two things, your age groups and social change, like, say, American songs going to Saudi Arabia or something.
The demographics we see for the social 50 artists, for instance, are all 13 to 17, 13 to 24, very heavily female.
Is that because they listen to more music, or they tweet more? Or
I think both. I think they're just rabid consumers of pop culture. We do our deals with the major labels are all global in nature, so we see data from all over that. Searching movie, I don't think that example happens too often, maybe once. But we do have a very strong interest in understanding the different culture tastes by country. I remember it being a surprising thing when I went out of the country. I was expecting, great, I get to learn, new top 40, all these different acts, and it was Kesha, Britney Spears, Beyonce, a lot of overlap in terms of America being American culture in lots of different territories.
is there any outliers of really interesting ones of an artist being hugely popular in a country that is not actually that popular in America or anything like that?
We haven't done too many international studies.
Which one has a hall?
Yeah. K-pop is a good example. It's been humongous for ages overseas, and Gangnam Style and Psy coming over.
Well, as I talk about rap goes to Korea, and all of a sudden he's got 50 million hits. It's like, what is he talking about? It doesn't even matter.
Well, we track one Twitter handle, one Facebook URL, so you can compare apples to apples for each band. And there's a K-pop band with 40 members of the band, which we never even accounted for. Breaks all our
So, question mainly for Peter, but Alex, feel free to jump in. Peter, at the end of your talk, you said because of the complexity of digital music and taste and all these different aspects of music, no one's really cracked the digital social code yet, right? So I have two questions about that. One, when someone does, and someone does get it right, what will we expect to see? Right? How will it look? How will we know if it's even happened, right? How will it sort of gain traction in the market? How will it feel? The other question is, given what you said, the complexity of it, do you think that any one player is ever going to get it right and crack the code, or are we going to continue to live in a world where there's a lot of players doing a lot of different sort of things?
Yeah, I think those two are related. When somebody, that's what we have right now. We essentially have a lot of fragmentation where there's some people using Spotify, there's definitely something happening around YouTube, people are sharing a lot of music on Facebook, but it's happening in different places, and I guess a lot of the time, kind of that interest flares up, but it doesn't light into a fire. And I think, when I talk about someone nailing it, I think it'll very much be in the same category as how you see an app like Instagram in terms of like the kind of market penetration that it gets, the engagement that it elicits in the users, the sort of addictive nature about how they want to check it regularly, how they want to bring in other people. We've sort of seen, I guess, little things, and who knows? Like, it could be that it just ends up being in Twitter, in Facebook. But I guess I'm a big believer that it will be possible to build something dedicated to music. And I don't think that, I guess, the broad social networks will be able to, I guess, fill that void. I think it's just a matter of time before someone puts the pieces together and actually sort of builds something. But yeah, I guess directly to answer your question, you would just know by the number of users. Like Spotify, for example, has I think like 6 million paying users and maybe 20 million, 24 million overall users, which is kind of like still peanuts compared to the sort of social networks that you have in other areas.
Actually, I'm quite curious about that. It's a great segue. Who are you consulting with on establishing these very complex algorithms? Do you have a development team or analytics team that specializes in that? Or?
No, I'm just consulting from my brain. That's very much. It's also an interesting industry where there's actually sort of some B2B companies in music recommendations. So one is called the Echo Nest. That essentially is like about 30 PhD MIT devoted to music recommendations, and they're doing a lot of the hard work around creating these algorithms, and then they essentially make it available as a service where you come along and say, here's one artist, and they're like, here's 50 similar ones. And so a lot of what we're doing is kind of building on the shoulders of those. So rather than, us as such a small team trying to come up with that stuff from scratch, there's no way we could compete, and it also doesn't make sense to compete. Yeah, so we use the Echo Nest, and for example, what we might do is like build on top of that. So they've already figured out which artists are similar, what all the genres are that those artists are, and then we can take that, and then we can take a single person and say, well, here's all the artists that that person is into, and we can sort of extrapolate which genres they're into, and potentially what music they might be interested in, based on the sort of Echo Nest doing the raw kind of hard work, I guess, beneath the scenes.
Have you thought of consulting someone who is dealing with much broader scales of data of that kind? Or?
What do you mean by consulting in terms of like?
William Binney, for example, who used to work for NSA, was the mastermind behind scanning data, large amounts of data.
We're a little further along the entrepreneurial path, and we're about 20 people on 19th and 6th Ave. We hired a data science team, got a PhD in physics, and another one from the NSA. Yeah, absolutely. It's something that we're thinking about.
A lot of retired guys over there.
You also need money to hire people.
First, I want to applaud you guys because you guys are very brilliant and insightful. And I have several questions for Alex. Have you thought of tracking torrent data? And for Alex and Peter, what is next for you guys in the next year, 3 years, 5 years? What's down that road?
So we partnered with a company called Pure Media Technology, which was the company you might be familiar with if you try to download a file illegally and it turned into a siren track or a screen track. After the database switched more into the business analysis. So we tracked all that data again. It's the same questions of Foursquare and data source, which is, does this activity translate into other sales? And certainly it's interesting to some degree, but again, we need to sell services to the music industry. And Big Champagne was an early pioneer in P2P tracking. They sold to Live Nation last year. They struggled for a long time, and we found
terms of like, for us, what's next, very much the culmination of, I guess, some of the things I went through and some of the learnings and iterating. Essentially, we're working now on a mobile app that in many ways kind of aims to be your centralized home for music. So even though you might listen to music on multiple platforms and your kind of collection exists in multiple places, you might have friends that are on one service, you're using a different music service. So what we're trying to build, I guess, is a layer between those. So you can have a single application that you open up that understands your music taste and brings to you without you having to go to a lot of effort, a few selections of what you might want to listen to. And in the background is sort of handling all those complexities around, this one will play from YouTube, this one will play from Spotify. When you share a song, you're not thinking about, my friends use this service, so we're trying to handle a lot of those complexities underneath. So you have a nice simple app that just allows you to pick something to listen to share with people. And that'll probably, we're going to start, I guess, more widely beta testing that in a few months. And to be honest, it'll probably launch, hopefully the end of the year, maybe early next year. And if anyone knows native mobile engineers, Android or iOS, we're hiring right now. So definitely looking to ramp up and kind of take everything that we've learned and get a product out there that hopefully is the thing that we've been seeking for a couple of years now.
And for us, the next couple of years, we're on this relentless march to make data useful to the music industry. See a world where there's a lot of talk and changes and challenges in an industry that in very many ways is broken. I believe the democratization of data and all that can entail creates a very exciting future for the music industry. I believe that anytime a decision is made by anyone in the music industry, they'll use Next Big Sound to make that more intelligent and build long, sustainable artist careers. And I think that, again, I said it before, the transformation that we've seen in the music industry in terms of consumption fragmentation and then data analytics on top of that will apply to every other vertical. We own Next Big Book, Next Big TV show, Next Big everything else like that. And before I forget, we are hiring a UX designer. So if this sounds like an interesting mission, we'd love to talk to you. And we have a designer from the team in the back. Raise your hands to put you on the spot. So if you want to learn about our design process and what we go through, talk to him or myself.
Sort of related to the last part of this, have you correlated any data to any particular events, like say a movie got released and then the sales for the movie soundtrack spiked up?
Yeah, we did a study on late night television appearances for artists, and it's called the Conan Bump, and it made the cover of Billboard magazine, showing that Conan was the most effective in terms of lift in social and sales numbers of all the late night TV shows. A lot of research around that, because that's the fascinating thing, is right now there's an annual survey called Maximum Exposure where experts are, I use that in quotations because I'm one of the experts, on 1 to 10 rank the effectiveness of all these promotional outlets. I think the data can really decide how effective some of things will be.
We'll do one more.
So you've been working a lot with, predictive statistics of being like, so these band sales are increasing, and then you go to one of your clients being like one of the major, music sellers. How do you know which of the clients to approach with which bands? Who do you sell like that next big Justin Bieber to?
It's very tricky because we have to be that unbiased, third-party, neutral, and so we sell a subscription service to them where they can log in and see that list that I showed you kind of generated on a dynamic daily basis. So it's not any singular selection, spoon feed, secret process. It's everyone subscribes to the same data set, and then there's a million ways they can slice and dice it to find what they're looking for.
So why don't we switch to the third part of the evening, which is the fun part, which involves a lot of wine. For as long as you're able to stick around, I'm sure these guys can continue to answer questions. Couple quick announcements. Is there anyone here who works as a community manager for a web company or software company? because we love you guys, if you work in community management, you may know a British guy named Rich Millington who runs a blog called Feverbeat. It's an excellent community management blog. Community management is basically the strategy of cultivating coherent communities that actually engage with each other in online communities. And he's given us like 24 copies of his book, which is a pretty good book. So if anyone wants one of those, just come see me or just take one of that. But thank you so much, guys. Excellent presentations. And we're going to be doing our next event in September. And topic to be announced, that should be fun. So thank you all for coming. Stick around and have some wine. And